Well, it was after a disastrous snap election in July that Macron had appointed Michel Barnier to instill a sense of calm, but behind me in the National Assembly there is anything but. Michel Barnier, having tried to force through a budget, as you say, now faces not one but two votes of no confidence. We'll get those results any second now, so hold tight. But he has managed to unite polar opposites of the political spectrum against him, so much so that Marine Le Pen had actually asked her party to approve the text from the left that denounced her party's most vile obsessions with immigration. She and 24 others are currently awaiting the verdict of a trial in which they're accused of embezzlement. She denies that, but tonight she's taken her chances. She's rejected weeks of negotiations. She's tried to sink Barnier and, by default, President Macron. They've been trying to pass this budget palatable to the EU. As it stands, the deficit is double the EU limit. Here is what unfolded in Parliament today. A snap election, a hung parliament, a battle with Brussels and a government in peril. Mr Barnier, the EU's former Brexit negotiator, has seen it all before. But this time the screws are turning on him. Last night he made a desperate plea to MPs planning to make his stint as France's Prime Minister the shortest in history.
I know things are difficult on a social, economic, budgetary, financial level. I knew that from the start. But if we lose the no confidence vote, everything will be more difficult and more serious.
You're in danger of sinking the economy, Mr. Mélenchon. The leader of the largest left-wing opposition party, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, arrived amid fanfare for the vote. His party and its partners have been bent on bringing the conservative Mr Barnier down ever since he was installed by President Macron to shore up a fragile parliamentary alliance. The left-wing bloc, the New Popular Front, emerged from the snap election in July as the largest parliamentary grouping and say Barnier should be replaced by one of them.
People have voted on July the 7th and they have rejected Macron's political line for the third time, because there have been two legislative elections now, plus the European elections, and they have rejected Macron's politics.
But they haven't chosen anyone in particular, so is the case not that people want compromise? There needs to be compromise.
That's what Macron and his MPs say, you know, but it was a political mistake to appoint him, and it was a political mistake not to appoint the New Popular Front in the government.
The left have been set against Conservative Michel Barnier from the very get-go, and so it was the hard right he courted to try to get his budget through. It's a gamble, though, that's ultimately backfired. His plan to get France's bloated deficit down to levels the EU would be happy with scuppered. Barnier's 2025 austerity budget was set on tax rises and €60 billion worth of cuts. In his 3 months as Prime Minister, his attempts to get it over the line have been directed towards Marine Le Pen and her far-right National Rally Party. But negotiations on Monday hit a dead end, and in the chamber today were under attack.
The Prime Minister has chosen to prolong the technocratic winter that France was plunged into when Emmanuel Macron was elected in 2017. This budget is taking the French hostage and the most vulnerable too.
Le Pen's target above all is not Barnier but Macron. She spied an opportunity and set a trap for the president, who this week said he couldn't believe a vote of no confidence could happen. A stickler for ceremony and statecraft, this weekend he'll attend the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral alongside Donald Trump. France once again on the world stage. All the while, global markets and a wary EU, already spooked by political meltdown in Germany, await answers from a parliament he can no longer command. Well, I said hold tight. We've just had it confirmed that Michel Barnier has lost that no confidence vote. He becomes the shortest serving French Prime Minister ever. This government, the first to lose a vote of no confidence since 1962. And all of this just as President Macron lands after an official visit to Saudi Arabia.
Thanks, Amelia. So what are the wider implications of what's happening in France? The political crisis there, as Amelia mentioned, has been driven by an attempt to force through a budget that aimed to bring down the country's deficit. Our economics reporter, Neil MacDonald, is with me. So how much trouble is France in?
Well, today we haven't actually seen a market meltdown. Share prices in Paris actually went up, and that might seem remarkable on a day when the French government has been basically falling apart. But one investor has described this as a slow-burning crisis. And of course, that could be just as serious for France, for the wider European economy too. And of course, that is an economy to which the UK still sends more than almost half its exports. This graph, I think, gives you a clue about how investors are viewing the situation. It shows you the gap between the interest rate that the French government pays when it borrows money and the rate that Germany pays. Germany, of course, traditionally the financial bedrock. And you can see that this gap has been shooting upwards in recent weeks. And right now it's a level that we haven't seen since all the way back in 2012. Now that tells you that investors are getting more nervous about two things. First, the sheer volume of money that the French government is wanting to borrow, but also whether there is any political coalition out there that is willing to try and bring that borrowing under control. If that political coalition doesn't emerge, then we can expect to see that interest rate gap continue to grow.
And how have they got into that mess?
Well, aside from all the politics, France has become a slower growing economy. I can show you what the average annual growth rate in France was in the 10 years before the financial crisis and the 10 years after. And that's slowed down year after year. It means we've ended up with a smaller economy and more borrowing in France. And French politicians have to agree not just the short-term measures to bring down borrowing, but how they're going to make the economy grow faster long-term, another area where they don't agree.
Right, so I'm looking at around 1.5% growth and thinking, are there any lessons for Britain?
Yes, some of this may sound rather familiar to people over here. If I did that graph for the UK, it would show a very similar picture. Of course, the UK government does have a very large majority, so it can push through tax increases or planning reform if it wants to. And it's taken a lot of encouragement today from a new forecast by the OECD, leading international think tank, which shows the UK growing faster than France or Germany next year, though not the United States, it has to be said. Of course, that's a forecast for the future. Right now, it's being reported that business optimism is at its lowest level for almost 2 years in light of the tax increases pushed through in the budget. So a government here also struggling with the dealing of trying to bring its borrowings under control.
Thanks, Neil.